Hi everyone, this is my first story. I need some help and it's a bit urgent. This matter is too personal to share with my friends, so I'm telling it here. I'm Diana, a 52-year-old woman, and have been a single mother to my 25-year-old son. I've raised him on my own since he was born. My husband passed away while I was pregnant due to an aneurysm in his sleep. I woke up to find him gone. Since then, I've sacrificed a lot, something other single parents can relate to. I'm not saying my son owes me anything, but a little appreciation would be nice. Unfortunately, my son told me a few days ago that he didn't want me at his wedding. His fiancée and her family think I don't look rich enough to fit in with their guests. This was incredibly hurtful. In a moment of weakness, I did something out of character. This all started 2 years ago when he began dating Lily, who comes from a wealthy family. Her parents own a top real estate firm in the state, and she's always dressed in luxury brands and owns 3 cars. In comparison, I'm just a college economics professor. I make a decent living, enough to raise my son single-handedly for the past 25 years. Things started changing when he began dating Lily. Initially, I had no problem with her or their relationship, but after our first meeting, my son called to tell me I needed to change certain things about my house, because he found the old furniture embarrassing compared to Lily's parents' mansion. We fought over this because I didn't think there was anything wrong with my house. The old furniture had character and sentimental value, especially since some pieces were picked out by my late husband. I never wanted a glamorous lifestyle. I was happy living within my means. I valued the life I had and saw no reason to change it for anyone. After that fight, my son realized he was being a jerk and apologized. We patched things up, but he never brought Lily over to my place again. I only met her a handful of times and met her parents once when they got engaged. I attended their engagement party, but my son criticized how I dressed, saying I should have put more effort into it. But I thought I was dressed perfectly fine. I'm not stupid. I knew his real issue was that I wasn't wearing luxury brands, just clothes I could afford. He was too afraid to say it outright. Even though he started being distant after introducing Lily to me, I still tried to keep in touch. 3 days ago, he visited and told me that Lily and her parents didn't think I would fit in at the wedding. They felt I wouldn't blend with their friends and business associates. Since Lily's parents were funding most of the wedding, he thought it was best to respect their wishes. He suggested having a private ceremony later that I could attend, but he wanted me to understand his position. He didn't want me to feel out of place. I was very hurt and started crying. He got exasperated and said there was nothing to cry about because it was just a fact that I didn't look rich enough. He didn't want me to embarrass myself or him. He hoped I would understand, but accused me of being selfish for not caring about his image. Once I stopped crying, I told him to get out and never come back. He tried to argue, but I screamed at him to leave. Still upset, I decided to do something questionable. A couple of weeks ago, I had helped him secure the venue he wanted for his wedding. He had been struggling to finalize it because the owner wasn't willing to rent it out, despite negotiations from Lily's parents. They had even sent out invitations with that address. When he told me the owner's name, I realized I knew him from college. I thought I could help, but wanted it to be a surprise. I reached out and discovered the owner and his wife were worried about their property being trashed. I vouched for my son and assured them that Lily's parents, being top real estate firm owners, would ensure the place stayed pristine. It took a few days, but I convinced him to rent it out without mentioning my involvement. My son was thrilled, completely unaware of my involvement. That's probably why he felt confident enough to tell me I wasn't wanted at the wedding. After his visit, I was deeply hurt and decided to call the venue owner. I ended up sharing everything with him, even though I hadn't planned to. He and his wife were very kind and comforted me, even though we're not particularly close. They decided to back out of the deal, not wanting to be involved with someone so ungrateful. I thanked them, and the next day they returned the advance money and informed my son they couldn't rent the property to him anymore. This left my son and Lily's family scrambling to find a new venue with only 2 weeks to go before the wedding. Lily's parents were furious and even threatened to sue, but the contract allowed the owners to cancel up to 1 week before the event. They hadn't bothered to read the fine print. Feeling vindicated, I wrote a letter to my son explaining everything. It was a petty move, I agree, but he had hurt me a lot over the past couple of months, and I couldn't tolerate it anymore. I explained everything in my letter, and instead of posting it, I went to his house that evening, knocked on the door, and left the letter on the doorstep. I drove back home and blocked him to ensure he couldn't reach me. Later that night, he came over again, but this time he looked truly sorry. He told me he had read the letter and was there to apologize. He had no idea I was the one who secured the venue for him. He was crying and said he was really sorry for how he had treated me. He hadn't realized how much it would hurt me. Now, even Lily was upset, and he needed me to speak to the owner and fix the situation. With just 2 weeks to go before the wedding and all the invitations sent out with that venue's address, they were desperate. He started begging me to help, but I told him his treatment of me over the past months since he started dating Lily was unacceptable. The things he said were hurtful, and I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. I believed I had raised a good man, but his behavior had been shallow. He had chosen to side with his fiancée and her parents over his own mother. I reminded him that from his childhood I had sacrificed a lot for him, and all I ever expected in return was a bit of appreciation. Instead, he made it clear he was ashamed and embarrassed by me because his fiancée and her parents were not on board with me and found me embarrassing. He promised to take it all back, speak to Lily and her parents, and get them to apologize. But for now, he just wanted me to speak to the owner and fix the situation so they could keep their chosen venue. I told him I had already spoken to the owner and wouldn't keep disturbing them. They had to figure out a way to deal with this on their own, as I couldn't help them anymore. He started getting pissed off, saying I was being unreasonable. I told him to leave because I couldn't help him. Feeling adamant, I watched him give up and say I was free to do whatever I wanted. But if I didn't help him, I would lose him forever. He accused me of being selfish and said he was tired of balancing these pressures. He claimed Lily would be more understanding and that he was exhausted and done with it. Then he left. Since then, I've been worried about whether I made the right choice. So, I'm here to ask if I am the asshole for refusing to help my son get back his wedding venue. Update 1. It's been a week since I last spoke to my son, and I still haven't reached out to the venue owner. I've been conflicted, but things are clearer to me now. I realized I was just being sentimental. My son is old enough to handle this on his own. Besides, I don't think I could convince the owner to change their minds after what I told them. They seem pretty firm in their decision. I've spoken to several friends and relatives, explaining the entire situation. Many family members were surprised they hadn't received wedding invitations, so I told them the truth. My son was embarrassed by his family and didn't think we'd fit in with his fiancé's crowd. People were really offended, and when I told them about the venue situation, they felt my reaction was justified. My son hasn't spoken to me since our last conversation, and we didn't end on a good note. If this were truly important to him, he would have reached out again. There are just a few days left until the wedding, and I don't know what they'll do since the venue's address is already printed on the invitations. But I know it's not my problem anymore. If he doesn't want to invite me to his wedding or consider me his family, then I'm absolved of my responsibilities as his mother. I'm still processing this emotionally because it's quite difficult. As a single mother, my son has been my whole world, but in my mind, I've made my decision, and I'm going to stick with it. Update 2. There were just 2 days until the wedding, and I wasn't holding out hope that my son would reach out. But today, Lily actually contacted me. It was surprising, considering I thought she and her family didn't want me at the wedding. So why would she expect me to want to talk to her? Despite my reservations, I had a gut feeling and answered the call. I could hear Lily trying her best not to cry as she spoke. She admitted she knew about my fallout with my son, but begged for a chance to speak to me and convince me to fix things. She said some surprising things, like how she knew we hadn't started off on the right foot and that she respected and admired me. She wanted me to talk to the venue owner and fix the situation, despite my current fight with her fiancé. She mentioned that my son had forbidden her from speaking to me but felt disappointed when she found out I wouldn't be attending the wedding. I snapped at her, accusing her of putting on an act. I reminded her that she and her family were the ones who didn't want me at the wedding, which caused my son to turn against me. There was silence on her end for a couple of minutes before she said neither she nor her parents had said anything like that, and there must have been a misunderstanding. Both of us were confused. I insisted that my son told me they didn't think I would fit in at the wedding, while she claimed he told her I refused to attend because I didn't like her and didn't approve of her family. We realized my son had been feeding us both lies. He was embarrassed and used Lily and her family as an excuse to avoid inviting me to the wedding, not wanting to show he didn't belong to their world. My head was spinning. I told Lily I needed a break and would call her back later to discuss this in detail. After half an hour, once I had processed everything, I called her back. We talked more, and I told her everything from the beginning. My son had always made it seem like she and her family had a problem with me. She claimed neither she nor her parents had said any of those things. She said my son had made it seem like I didn't like her family, which is why she kept her distance. When he decided not to invite me to the wedding, he told me one thing and told Lily I wasn't interested in attending because I didn't approve of her. He had even told her he was going no contact with me, and she needed to respect that. She never bothered to speak to me about it until now. I was incredibly hurt, realizing this was all my son's doing, not Lily's. Before, I could forgive him a little, thinking he was under someone else's influence. But now, knowing he did this on his own, there is no forgiveness left in my heart. After speaking to Lily, we were both disappointed. She said she had nothing more to say to him. We apologized to each other for the misunderstandings and hung up. It's been a few hours, and I'm just sitting here, unsure of what to do. I'm pretty sure Lily will cancel the wedding, and good for her. She deserves better. Unfortunately, I can't find a better son for myself. Every time I think about how much I have done for him and what he did to me, my heart hurts more. I'm sure he'll reach out to me since Lily and I now know the truth, but with what he's done, he's lost the right to call my house his home, and me his mother. Update 3. Since yesterday's post, I've been grieving the loss of my son. He's alive, but I know I've lost him. Even if he comes back, I'm not taking him in until I've dealt with this emotionally. As I predicted, with nowhere to go, he came back home. A few hours ago, someone started ringing my doorbell frantically. When I saw it was him, I decided not to open the door. I spoke to him through the intercom and told him to leave because after everything he had done, this home no longer had a place for him. He had a bunch of bags and looked exhausted, his face splotchy from crying, but I didn't let that weaken my resolve. I ignored it when he said he was here to apologize and fix his mistakes. I could hear the desperation in his voice, but I just tuned him out. He said Lily had kicked him out after their fight and knew we were both aware of everything now. He kept talking about how difficult it had been adjusting to Lily's world. He admitted he started acting like someone he wasn't and was sorry for being embarrassed of me and his family. He said it was all new to him, and he got so caught up in pretending that he forgot it was hurting me. He knew he had been selfish and probably didn't deserve forgiveness, but he wanted a chance from me as his mother, hoping I would be more forgiving than his partner. I told him I might have been more forgiving if he were truly sorry. Right now, he was just sorry he got caught. He needed a place to stay and didn't want to spend money on a hotel or finding his own place. If he were genuinely sorry, he wouldn't keep trying to justify his actions. He mentioned how difficult it had been for him at least 5 times since he showed up, so I didn't believe he was genuinely apologetic. I told him I might forgive him eventually, but for now, I wanted him to leave me alone. He then offered to pay rent to stay with me, saying he genuinely wanted to make things right. He claimed he could stay with friends, but I knew he was bluffing because Lily had told me he hadn't even invited many of his friends to the wedding. They probably weren't on speaking terms either. After a while of bickering, he snapped at me, called me heartless, and left. I know he won't be homeless. He has enough resources to find a place to live. My job as a mother is done. I raised him to be a decent human being, and for a while he was. But now, this is not my problem anymore. Update 4. It has been 2 weeks since my last update. On the day my son was supposed to get married, Lily posted that they had parted ways and asked for privacy during this difficult time. A bunch of people sent me the post. I felt bad, but not enough to reach out to my son. After he showed up at my house and I refused to let him in, he didn't contact me again. I guess I was right. He was just sorry because he got caught and knew no one else would speak to him. I decided to turn my back on him, and since then, he hasn't reached out to apologize. I'm fine with staying no contact. I've been living on my own for years, so being completely by myself doesn't make a difference. I'm not lonely. I have friends, family, and my life. My son just won't be a part of it anymore. Maybe I will find it in myself to forgive him one day, but it won't be anytime soon, and I am fine with that.